Hello, this is Rosemary Armao, and again, you're listening to my podcast, Beyond the Brink and Fighting Back. The idea is there's horrible things happening in the world, and we talk about those, but if you only talked about the horrible things, life would not be worth living. And there's really tons of things that do make life worth living: books and travel and grandchildren and pets. And one of them is nature. And that explains, in part, the reason I've invited today's guest, who is Jim Odato. Jim is just a superior reporter, one of the best. For a long time, he's been one of the best in New York State, covering state government and corruption and budgeting and money and all of those issues. And then we worked together. We did at Albany. I think I hired you. I'm going to take credit for that. I got him to come over and teach young students how to do what he does, at least halfway as good as he does. And then when he retired, he didn't really retire at all. He became an editor and now remains a contributor for the Adirondack Explorer. He has a long and deep relationship with the Adirondacks, and I want him to talk about a little bit. And we're going to talk about some of the issues involving that region of New York State now and why those of us who live in cities and urban areas and rarely get out there still should care about the Adirondacks. So, Jim, talk about yourself a little bit. Tell my listeners about how you ended up being an investigative reporter in the Adirondacks.
Well, I do have a warm spot in my heart for Rosemary Armao because she did hire me to become a journalism instructor at Albany. And doing that kind of work made me realize how being an editor might be a good idea someday. And it prepared me working with students and reading their copy and trying to figure out ways to explain to them what reporters do, which is hard for a reporter. Reporter rolls out of bed day in, week out, month after month, year after year, and figures out how to do the job, but never really figures out how to explain how to do the job. And so to work with young students for 27 sessions over 15 weeks, explaining the process and coming up with ideas on how to do the work really prepared me so well to be the Adirondack Explorer's editor. And it was really a great learning experience for me. So again, I have a warm spot in my heart for Rosemary because she introduced me to the education of an editor.
Oh, that's great. You get a different view of editors when you're in the job. I mostly hated them when I was a reporter.
No question.
Hated everything they stood for, and they were mostly just cutting out my wonderful wordage. But
Yes, that
then you,
happened.
you finally get an idea of what they're after.
Yes. Anyway, the Adirondacks. I have a warm spot in my heart for the Adirondacks too, because
Right.
when I graduated from the University of Massachusetts as a journalism and English major, and my goal was to work for a weekly, a daily newspaper. And the first newspaper to offer me a job, yeah, daily, happened to be the smallest daily newspaper in New York State. It was the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, and that's where I started working a 40-hour a week gig. And I've never left New York State as a result. I've been working in New York State ever since for a number of media companies. And so it was, I kind of came full circle when I came back to the Adirondacks as the editor of the Adirondack Explorer. But I was freelancing for them even before then. And so there are a lot of issues in the Adirondacks. The interesting thing is a lot of the issues that were issues when I was a young reporter right out of college are still the issues
They're
in
still the same things are
in
important.
2026. And it's just higher tech now. That's all.
One of the biggest issues, it seems to me, in reading over and researching for this podcast, is the real conflict between two good goals. One is forever wild. I'm going to have you talk about that. that very controversial and poignant section of the state constitution, keeping the Adirondacks forever wild, and then using them for great entertainment and recreation and Olympic wonders. People have been raving about Lake Placid since the Olympics, and there is an impetus to bring skiing and mountain biking to new levels in the area. But those two are conflicting goals. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, okay. Well, Forever Wild is, you know, a lot of people don't realize how big the Adirondacks are. The Adirondacks are 6 million acres, and you can fit 3 very large national parks into the Adirondacks. Pick your favorite 3, and they will fit in the Adirondacks. And half of the acreage is state land, half of it is private. And the state land is by and large part of the New York State Forest Preserve. You can't do anything. You can do very few things in it other than hike, enjoy, take photographs, recreate. Development is not allowed. And the only development that's allowed in the remaining 3 million acres is largely confined to the hamlets, the already developed areas. Now, if you happen to live outside those hamlets or have property outside those hamlets that are private, you need authorization from the Adirondack Park Agency to do any development. You need to submit plans, go through scrutiny, analysis, and then you have to get a permit to do whatever it is you want. You may or may not get that permit. And as a result, it's different from anywhere else in the United States. It's probably different from anywhere else you can name. You just a lot of developers come to New York State and think they can do what they can do in Manhattan or Yonkers or in Binghamton. You get Florida developers and Texas developers that buy tracts of land and they think they're going to be able to build condos and
Right.
Homes and things like that. It's not that easy. As a matter of fact, a lot of developers pack their plans and put them on ice. So the Forever Wild thing affects private development, and sometimes it affects public development. And you have a very, very big public agency in the state in the Adirondacks. It's the biggest employer in the Adirondacks. It's got the biggest budget. It's the Olympic Regional Development Authority, and they run the one-time 1980 Winter Olympic facilities. They manage them. There are facilities. They're taxpayers' facilities. They manage them, and they have the green light from the Hochul administration to try to create 12-month, 4-season, year-round recreational destinations there. And so a lot of things that used to be the norm are changing, including putting things that are not winter sports onto those venues. And they're environmentalists and the Hochul administration or the Olympic Regional Development Authority, which is also known as ORDA for short,
Right.
Clash from time to time because a strict reading of the Adirondack Park law and the Constitution, which Article 14 of the Constitution declares the Forever Wild clause. And Forever Wild means just that, hands off.
Do it. Yeah.
Right? So from time to time, there are clashes as development is proposed in some of these tracts that are forest preserve. There is forest preserve around and within some of these state properties where recreation occurs. and there have been carve-outs to allow for certain things to happen over time. And you can look around at the Olympic facilities and say, wait a minute, how do we have ski jumps there?
Right.
How do we have new lodges? How is it that trees come down? And again, sometimes there have been carve outs, and sometimes there have been mistakes, as in what Adirondack environmental groups will say, violations of Article 14
Right.
of the state constitution. And in fact, as recently as this past fall, Orta got into hot water because it was hosting a downhill mountain bike race. It was a big international race. And it was the second year in a row that they've been the host of such an event. They paid.
This is, Jim, one of the non-winter sport things.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And this is the second year that they hosted this event. The first year they hosted it, it was strictly a cross-country biking event. It was an international,
Mm-hmm.
but it was at Mount Van Hoevenberg.
Right.
And they developed a trail there. This year they did that bike race and added a very much more exciting and an event that draws more spectators, a downhill event, much more extreme sports at Whiteface Mountain,
Right.
just right near Lake Placid. It's in Wilmington. Van Hoevenberg is even closer to Lake Placid. So both of those events were going on, and they were under a deadline to build two tracks, one at Mount Van Hoevenberg and one at Whiteface for the first time. And when they built the Whiteface track, they did it without getting the required state DEC work plan.
So they sort of pulled a trump and went ahead
down.
and did the work without getting any approval.
That's right. And so in a very unusual case, the DEC actually notified, sent a letter, a formal letter, a legal document, a notice of violation to the Olympic Regional Development Authority and say, hey, wait a minute, you did all this work and you weren't supposed to until you got the green light from us, and we needed to review. And it was kind of an interesting episode because it pointed out one more time that things in the Adirondacks that go, elsewhere, that are allowed elsewhere without too much scrutiny, still get some scrutiny, even when a state agency is looking at a sister agency. There's at least a shout out. Now, there were people watching and complaining about this. There are watchdogs. In this particular matter, the watchdog that blew the whistle was an organization called Protect the Adirondacks. It's one of the more vigorous, litigious environmental groups in the Adirondacks. So that was an interesting episode. And again, it's one of many continual clashes between the forever wild clause and what people want to do in public and private lands in the Adirondacks, particularly on the public lands. And that clash continues all the time. And all you have to do is go to watch a few Adirondack Park Agency meetings, and the clash is there for you to enjoy and document and write about. That's the beautiful thing about the Adirondacks too. Is if you're a news person, there is always this continual conflict that you get to write about.
Right. Yeah, I have, as I say, doing research for this, I certainly became aware. I think I sent you 18 possible topics that all come from news reports on, but the dispute is the same: keeping it wild and keeping it open for people. So one of the other public agencies that's has a problem with the Forever Wild section of the Constitution is the Corrections Department. Since 2009 in New York, some five prisons in within the area of the Adirondack region closed down. They're not used. They are already developed, and yet they're now decaying, and there's difficulty turning them into something else because of this central conflict. What do you think about that? What do you see as a good solution for that problem?
Oh, well, it is a predicament. It's another one of these classic Adirondack clash stories, and it's also a money story. It's also a taxpayer story. It's an economic story. It's a job story.
Yep.
Okay, so let's you and many people in our demographic remember Mario Cuomo. Mario Cuomo built prisons. He and one of his, some people say that his upstate, sarcastically, and maybe realistically, say that part of his upstate economic development strategy was to build prisons. And a lot of those prisons were in the North Country, way away from um, where a lot of the prisoners' hometowns were, which was which was a problem in itself because of the difficulties for loved ones to visit and things like that. But regardless, what's been going on, uh, the trends since Mario Cuomo left office, since George Pataki left office, since Eliot Spitzer left office, since Governor Patterson left office, uh, since Andrew Cuomo left office, is that
Mm-hmm.
the prison population keeps shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Prison jobs in the North Country have become a very important part of the economy of the North Country. There are many correction officers um, who depend on the prison um, uh, workforce or jobs.
Right, to feed
And
their families and
so,
to
so there's
send
a
their kids to school.
so there's a prison economy in the Adirondacks, and not only are there some state prisons, by the way, there was a federal prison built in near Lake Placid, and it was built before the Olympics to be a just a a um, a, a dorms for the athletes. It was an athletes' village, and after the Olympics, it became a federal prison. So uh, all this square footage is unnecessary anymore because there was vacancies in all these prisons. So what's the smart thing to do? It's easy for Albany to take a look at the map, say, wait a minute, there's four prisons within 20 square miles of each other. How many do we really need? And if you were strictly doing a dollars and cents smart division of budget plan, you would close a whole bunch of them. But you couldn't really do that. So over time, the political struggle between Albany and the North Country evolved so that slowly but surely some prisons did close. And there's been a hue and cry every time they did in the North Country. But now you have two or three empty prisons,
Mm-hmm.
perfectly good prisons that were kept up, maintained. We spent lots of money, taxpayer money, making sure they had furnaces and roofs and good fences and all the rest. Uh, Now they're empty. So what can you do with them? Well, unfortunately, the Constitution doesn't allow uh, immediate reuse by a private vendor or a private uh, company, a Amazon warehouse, whatever. So the um, the idea is to get some language so that these closed prisons can again be the beneficiary of a carve out. You've got these underutilized state assets and with development potential. Um, there's Camp Gabriel's not too far from Saranac Lake. There's Mariah Shock, which is in the heart of the Adirondacks, and it was a very popular prison. Um,
How are prisons popular? What does that mean?
Oh, it was Mariah Shock was a very popular prison because it was a low, very low. Um, there's maximum security prisons, medium
Right.
security, low security prisons. This was very low. It was so low that the prisoners there weren't weren't referred to as prisoners. They were referred to as inmate, not even inmates. Just they were the people that built trails, helped build the ice palaces.
Oh, wow.
They were almost members of the community that just happened to go back to their dorm at night, and their dorm had correction officers there. So they were like, it was a very, and it was intimate. It was close to the town of Moriah, the village of Moriah. So, and it was there for years. It closed. It's gone. And a lot of the graduates, if you will, or some of the graduates stayed. There were prison families for decades. The elected leaders used to be correction officers there. It was well known, well regarded, but it was closed for the reasons I described before. So these prisons are seen as potential redevelopment venues. And because of this complicated, forever wild constitutional situation, there's got to be some kind of carve out that would allow reuse. And it could be an opportunity for housing, for instance. Housing is also critical in the
Right.
Adirondack.
I want to ask her about that in a minute, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's no chance, Jim, that these would become ice warehouses that we've been hearing so much about.
Oh, I see what you mean. You know, this that would it's since they're state facilities,
Right.
right? The Hochul administration isn't exactly welcoming ICE with open arms, and I, that that would be an ironic reuse. Let me put it
It
that way.
it would, but it's very obvious. It's you have a workforce there that's suited to that. It would be an opportunity for the Hochul administration to make nice with the Trump
Yeah,
administration.
yeah, yeah.
This has to have occurred to you and maybe to other people in government.
Well, the thing is, it's speculative. In the North Country, not all these prisons are specifically in the Adirondacks. Some of them are very close, like
Right.
right on the ring, and so some of them could potentially get, um, uh, you know, some other arrangement. But um, my thinking is that unless the state put them up on public auction and the federal government had the highest bid, I
Hmm.
just don't see that happening. I think what's going to end up happening if it happens is that um, the state um, negotiates with someone. Uh, some, I guess they probably would have to have a competitive bid of some sort for reuse. But I really don't think there's going to be people fighting over this square footage. I think they're going to have to actually put um, put their thinking caps on to find
Hmm.
suitable or potential users. But there probably are some. But again, it could be a resolution to housing, potential housing facilities, um, or maybe multi-use. Um, they're they're in pretty good. Most of the facilities that have been closed, some of them have been closed for too long. They're going to probably need some attention. But there's some that were
Right.
recently closed,
Right.
like
Right.
McGregor, which is not too far from Lake George.
Exactly.
Uh,
There's no chance of these being just pulled down and allowing the land to be restored to wild status again, is
oh,
there?
oh, I think there is a chance of that. I think
The
that
environmental groups would like that.
the thing about the environmental groups is they're not as sometimes they're seen as obstructionists,
Right.
uh, but the when it comes to reuse of already built infrastructure and adding housing and doing things that could stimulate job creation, they're much more, I think, open-minded.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So they're looking for some sort of balance, then, is what you're saying.
yeah. I think. Well, yeah, I think that they're
Yeah.
reason they want a healthy Adirondacks, and a
Right.
healthy Adirondacks means, jobs and people and young people, and opportunity.
Right.
Uh,
And the North Country, we should say, has had trouble for a long time. Their facilities have closed. There's an acute housing shortage. You can't afford to be a worker in the Adirondacks because you can't afford a place to live. And so it is economic development of the area is difficult even without, Section 14.
Yeah, the Adirondack Explorer did a big series about a year and a half ago on housing shortages.
Right.
A couple of years ago on the housing crunch in the in the Adirondacks. So there were many cases of people driving 60 miles, coming from Glens Falls or from Plattsburgh and Malone to work at, service industry jobs in
Right.
the Adirondacks because they couldn't afford or find something. And that's a real problem if you want to attract and retain workers. And what a lot of the smart hoteliers are doing is they're finding or building dorms
Mm-hmm.
for their staff. Sometimes their staff are coming from foreign shores under visa provisions. And it's a very interesting dynamic because there's the Explorer followed up its deep dive into the housing shortage with a deep dive into the lack of labor force in the Adirondacks. So both of these things are stymieing development. So you got the forever wild complication, you got housing shortage complication, you got labor workforce complication, you got an aging population
Right.
complication.
Right.
You have a declining population. Um, the most recent census, Rosemary, found that there was 120, a little more than 123,000 permanent residents in the Adirondacks,
Right.
which is small, but it used to be 130,000.
Yeah, it's declining.
Previous,
Young people are not staying in the North Country.
and check this out. Um, about 17% of the population is less than 18 years old.
Wow.
So the schools,
Right.
just like,
Where
um,
do they get their money?
yeah,
Yeah.
the schools have empty seats. So it's just like the prisons. How many schools do you need? But it's tougher to close a school than it is a prison, it seems to me. So, so you've got a lot of you got a lot of things going on. Now, the Adirondacks gets allegedly 12 million visitors a year, and so the Adirondacks swells with more people during the warm months. And a lot of people have second homes. A lot of people have the ability to leave Florida in winter or wherever the heck they go,
Right.
et cetera. But then the crunch occurs even more. I mean, the restaurants are open or want to be open, and the service industry is in gear, hotels are in gear, and where are the jobs coming from?
Right.
So where are the workers coming from? And so
Building
it's a
jobs, yeah.
real challenge for the property managers, the executives, the entrepreneurs of the Adirondacks.
This is the podcast Beyond the Brink, and you're listening to Jim Odato, who is a longtime expert reporter and investigative reporter on state government and spending, and he has a long association with the Adirondacks, which is what we're talking about today. I also want to ask you about a related development versus preserving, and that's the Whitney estate. Can you tell my listeners about well, there's a wonderful history of that estate and what's happening with it now.
Yeah, sure. The just a touch of background, if you're from the Albany area, you might know some of this stuff,
Right.
but um, Whit, Whitney Industries is has a very long uh, history, and Whitney Industries owned tens of thousands of acres of the Adirondack forests because they were a timber company. Whitney Industries was owned by Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, very wealthy, uh, tycoonish kind of figure of the 20th century. And one of his wives, his longest term wife, I believe, was Mary Lou Whitney. And if you have any interest in the horse scene, the thoroughbred horse scene, which I used to cover, as a matter of fact, um, in Saratoga Springs, then you know who the Whitneys are. And they have a mansion, the Whitneys have a mansion in Saratoga Springs, and they had tens of thousands of acres of Adirondack woodlands. They sold, Mary Lou lost her husband, Sonny, or Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, and remarried. And she married a man named John Hendrickson. And he was very active in the horse scene too in Saratoga Springs. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, Andrew Cuomo named him to the New York Racing Association as a representative of his administration. And I got to know him pretty well because I used to cover the New York Racing Association. So, anywho, the Whitneys sold, or Mary Lou and John Hendrickson sold to the state of New York during George Pataki's administration about 15,000 acres of Whitney properties in the Adirondacks, the Whitney estate. The Whitney Park is what it was called. And they were beautiful acres, a beautiful lake, Little Tupper Lake, with all this natural native trout in it that had been preserved and cared for and was the apple of John Hendrickson's eye. And the state of New York became the stewards of that 15,000 acres and of Little Tupper Lake. And unfortunately, somehow, bass got introduced to Little Tupper Lake and took out all that native trout. John Hendrickson was furious at this. And he said he would never sell another acre of land to the state of New York as a result. But what happened is Mary Lou Whitney passed away. John Hendrickson started liquidating assets. And he decided that the remaining 36,000 acres of Whitney Park would be sold privately. He did not want the state to get it. And so he put it up for sale. And this got environmentalists very nervous because Whitney Park, the 15,000 acres, was added to the Whitney wilderness. It is now part of the forever wild protected state forest land, the Adirondack Forest Preserve. And environmentalists see the 36,000 acres that remains of Whitney Park as some of the choicest, most beautiful wilderness still around and available. It's been on the to buy list for many years. It's the Open Space Committee has put it on their please buy list for a long time. It's been there. Unfortunately, John died. As a matter of fact, during the August Saratoga meet of 2024, suddenly at age 59, and he left directions to the trustees of his trust, according to the trustees, to make sure the state never got their hands on that remaining 36,000 acres. It cannot be sold to the state. The Hochul administration wants it. Kathy Hochul reached out to the trustees, because I got a copy of the letter through the Freedom of Information Law, which I was able to acquire the letter. Let me put it that way. It's a public document, and it indicates that Kathy Hochul reached out to the trustees and said, "Hey, can we make a deal?" And one of the deals, they were trying to get around the provision that they couldn't buy it. And they said, "How about if we leased it for 99 years? And that didn't fly. What happened was, and the reason I'm so familiar with this is because I was able to find out who the trustees were planning on selling the land to. It was a Texas developer who was he was going to buy all 36,600 acres for $125 million. And he wanted to build a golf course there, a resort, put a hotel in, probably a little ski facility. There's already a very large camp there. You would call it a great camp, I guess.
Right.
And but it's on this small part of this 36,000 acre tract. And when I was talking about how large the Adirondacks were, about how you can put 3 national parks in,
yes,
you can put all of Manhattan and still have room into the Whitney Park that's available, the 36,000 acres. Think how big that is. So anyway, what happened was the developer wanted to lay off some of the 36,000 acres on the state or on somebody else. He didn't want to have to buy all $125 million funds.
He just wanted the part he wanted.
He wanted to offload some of it. He was hoping the state would be, which is the most likely offload participant, would be available. But the trustees held firm to what their interpretation of John Hendrickson's wishes are.
Which is the state can't have it.
Yeah, the state can't have it. And so the Texas developer, after spending a long time trying to figure out a way to get a deal done, ended up walking back his plans. He was going to buy the mansion in Saratoga Springs, and the 36,000 acres. Both of those things he walked back on. And one of the things that I was thinking about is that with his plans, he also wanted to have a Michelin level restaurant at this golf resort that he was planning. Where was he going to find the workers? Because where that is, where the Whitney Park is Hamilton County. Hamilton County is a very large county with very few people. And one of the
like Wyoming.
Yes, exactly. Where were the workers going to come from? Now, one of the things he was thinking about is also opening a lodging house and restaurant at the mansion in Saratoga Springs. Maybe having staffs move between sites, even though it's 3 hours or 2.5 hours difference between the two sites. But it was a possibility, and it was an entrepreneurial idea, and that's what developers are all about, trying something that's never been tried before. But anyway, that didn't come to pass. But the biggest losers of this not coming to pass, this $125 million deal, is a very small village or town, the town of Long Lake. John Hendrickson not only said in his trust document that he didn't want the state to get the 36,000 acres, but he also said whoever does buy it, the net proceeds of that sale go to the town of Long Lake, because Mary Lou Whitney, his wife, and John Hendrickson fell in love with the town of Long Lake. They used to participate in their fireworks show. They bought the fireworks. They contributed to their healthcare facility there. They became part of the community of Long Lake, and they loved it so much. They said, "Oh," he said, well, "when I sell, the net proceeds go to the town of Long Lake. The town of Long Lake's got a budget um, of, I don't know, let's say $4.5–5 million for the entire town, and they were going to get the proceeds, the net proceeds of a $125 million sale. It's going to change the trajectory of that town.
Of course, forever in massive ways. Yes.
And so, at some point, I mean, that offer or that deal still is on the table. So whatever, and that property is still available today for $125 million. It's
Wait, I thought you said the Texas developer walked away from the deal.
Oh, he did.
He did.
No, the what I mean is that it's still on the market for 100.
Still on the market. Okay. Okay.
And John's wishes still stand.
Right.
So
the state has been unable to find a walk around against the way he's crafted his trust documents. They can't get around his wish.
the thing is, there's so many brilliant lawyers in the world, and I'm sure a lot of them have been looking at this.
Yeah, they have to be.
But it's the trustees. As a matter of fact, there are two trustees, and one trustee is first among equals, and that is his brother. And his brother knew John better than anybody else walking the planet, probably. And they communicated regularly, if not daily, certainly every other day. And he's interpreting that what John's wishes were. Right. And it might be in writing. You don't get to see trust documents.
Right.
You get to see wills, but you don't get to see trust. I've seen the will. I got that through through public. Mm-hmm. But I have not been able to see the trust document. All I know is what the developer says and what the trustees say. And in documents that I've seen going back and forth that indicate that deal, that the state is not allowed to acquire that property. Now, maybe they can work some kind of magic. And, it's been done before. Lawyers find loopholes or.
Yeah, I was looking for a loophole, I have to say. I also find myself, I want to ask her, and we're running out of time, about those damn fish that ate all the trout. They're the cause of all this trouble. I'd love to hear that story.
Well, that's the funny thing is it was someone introduced bass. Now, I don't know if it was an environmental terrorist, or whether it was just a sloppy fisherman who threw back some stuff. It doesn't take much to overrun.
No, you put a couple, it wouldn't take very many fish to go in there where there's no predators and plentiful food. You can see how it happened, but
there's speculation all over the place about what happened. But I'm too responsible to go there during your podcast. But I would say this though, that that Whitney Park thing is another one of the many weird things that happened in the Adirondacks. This just happens to be a high profile one because there's so much at stake. And we'll see how this resolves. We didn't even get into, I know you're very interested in politics. We didn't even get into the fact that almost the entire North Country and the Adirondacks is in the 21st congressional district. And it's a wide open race.
Yes,
because Elise Stefanik chose not to run for re-election. And that's going to be a very interesting high profile race in November. And a lot of the issues that we've been talking about, development in the Adirondacks, climate change, property rights, economic development, federal money, all those kind of things come into play in that 21st congressional race election.
Right, and absolutely affected. Um, Again, we're running out of time, and I have
Sure.
several directions I go to. I definitely have to have you back on again. Let me go with this. You just showed my listeners, Jim, your interest in the history and the background, all the context, which I know you know a lot about. And the history of the Adirondacks is fascinating. There's dozens of books on this. You did some work on surveyors, the surveyors who first laid out the park. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know it's fascinating.
Okay. Well, um, there are 46 high peaks in the Adirondacks, right? Um, and the Adirondacks at one time was simply a wild place. But the survey that occurred, what was that? Must in the 1800s, was done by Verplanck Colvin. And Verplanck Colvin was this guy who was very good. As a matter of fact, he died in Troy, New York. Verplanck Colvin was a guy who loved going out and hiking and learning about the wilderness. And he surveyed the Adirondacks. He was very good at going to Albany and getting money year after year for these surveys. He would get,
Okay, stupid question. Why was it important to survey the Adirondacks?
well, it was because it's never been surveyed before. We didn't know what we had there. We didn't know what where the water came from. Uh, we didn't know what the potential for train transportation was. We didn't know what the potential for mining was. It was really kind of wide open still. It was still the Wild
Hmm.
West. It was uncharted, literally
Uncharted
uncharted
territory, really.
territory.
Yeah.
And he was very interested in surveying it and charting it. And he was a very good talker, a very good salesman, as well as being a very good woodsman. And he got money from the legislature, from the governor, year after year, and did these surveys and mapped the Adirondacks. And at the top of every one of the 46 peaks, you'll see a United States Geological Survey marker. But Colvin was the first one to really get to these spots, and Colvin created what some people believe was the blue line, or called the blue line. The blue line is the boundaries of the Adirondacks. Um, Within the blue line is the Adirondacks. Outside of the blue line uh, are territories that you can do things like develop normally. But so now you see a lot of reference, or you hear a lot of references to, well, is that within the blue line? That means within the Adirondacks. But Colvin got the thing started. He did the surveys, and they're still referred to all these years later. Um, the the reason I was kind of interested in I mean, I've always been interested in Colvin, but the only writing I ever did about Colvin was I tracked down a guy who was so obsessed with Colvin that he studied all his surveys, got all his papers, and was working on a, uh, a biography of Colvin. Unfortunately, the fellow died young, and his project never got done. But I got a copy of his manuscript, unfinished manuscript, and read it. It was very well done. He idolized Colvin, and I wrote a story about that guy. That's my contribution to the history of Colvin, and that's
Well, that
about.
might be a future project for you. You've written other books, and you have a start here with the unfinished work that didn't make it.
Yes, the guy was not going to be the first biographer, but a different kind of biographer.
Different kind. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Go
yes,
ahead. No, go ahead. I interrupted you, Jim. Finish.
no, but Colvin went up there. for 28 years.
Yeah, that
Think
was
about the opus,
right.
this, the dedication. And the early years must have been brutal. I mean,
Right.
black flies, you know,
Blizzards,
yeah, you name it.
acid rain. Yeah, there's a few things to deal with when you're looking at those 6 million acres. We have truly run out of time, and
Yeah.
I have to enlist you for another hour in the future to talk about. We didn't even get to road salt and roads and maintaining roads in that huge expanse of basically tundra in some parts of the year, and how that affects the environment. Climate change is being studied in the Adirondacks. There's so many issues. So I definitely want to have you back. We like to close our podcast with a toast. So I have my glass here, and it is to trying to maintain the forever wild in a world that's changed so much from wildness.